The little girl's voice trembled through the cold Toronto evening air. Please, please don't hurt us. Her tiny hands were shaking as she stood in front of her mother, trying to be brave in a way no 7-year-old should ever have to be. What happened seconds later would change not only that night, but their entire lives, and it would remind everyone watching that sometimes heroes don't wear capes, they simply come home at the right moment. It was early winter in Mississauga, just outside Toronto. The snow had started falling heavier than expected, and the streets were unusually quiet. Inside a modest 2-story house, Emily Parker clutched her mother's sweater as 3 men stood in their living room. They weren't strangers exactly. They were distant relatives of her father's former business partner, claiming that the family owed them money after a failed investment. They had come unannounced, their voices loud, their presence intimidating. Emily's mother, Sarah, tried to stay calm. Her husband, Daniel Parker, had built a successful real estate company in downtown Toronto from nothing. He had grown up in Scarborough in a small apartment with immigrant parents who worked double shifts. Daniel knew what struggle felt like, which was why he never forgot to stay humble. But business had enemies, and tonight, those enemies were standing in his living room. Your husband thinks he can ignore us. One of the men sneered. Tell him we want our money. Or next time, we won't just talk. Sarah's heart pounded. Daniel was supposed to be back from Vancouver that evening, but his flight had been delayed because of a snowstorm. She felt completely alone. Emily could sense her mother's fear. That's when the little girl stepped forward, tears streaming down her pink cheeks. Please don't hurt us, she whispered, her small voice breaking. The room fell silent for a second. Even the men looked slightly uncomfortable. But pride and greed are powerful forces. One of them took a step closer, his boots leaving wet marks on the hardwood floor. And then, the front door opened. The sound echoed like thunder. Daniel Parker stood at the entrance, snow clinging to his black coat, his suitcase still in his hand. His eyes scanned the room in one sharp glance, instantly understanding everything. He didn't shout, he didn't panic, but there was something in his expression that made the men step back. Is there a problem here? Daniel's voice was calm, controlled, but firm. The men tried to explain themselves, twisting the story to make it sound like they were victims. But Daniel knew the truth. He had already settled every legal matter months ago. He had documents, proof. He had offered fair compensation during mediation, but they wanted more. They wanted intimidation to work. Daniel walked slowly toward his daughter first. He knelt down, gently wiping her tears with his gloved thumb. I'm here, he said softly. No one will hurt you. Those simple words filled the room with strength. He then stood up and faced the men. You have exactly 30 seconds to leave my house before I call the police. And trust me, I will. They hesitated. One of them muttered something under his breath, but they could see Daniel wasn't bluffing. In Canada, the law was clear, and Daniel had always done things the right way. He wasn't just wealthy, he was respected. Within moments, they grabbed their coats and left, slamming the door behind them. The silence that followed was heavy. Sarah collapsed onto the couch, her hands still shaking. Emily ran into her father's arms and cried harder than before, not out of fear this time, but relief. That night, after Emily fell asleep between her parents, Daniel stayed awake staring at the ceiling. He realized something painful. No matter how much money he made, no matter how many buildings he owned in downtown Toronto, his true wealth was lying right beside him, his family. The next morning, Daniel didn't go to the office. Instead, he drove to his lawyer's firm and ensured restraining orders were filed. He increased security at home, but more importantly, he sat down with Emily that evening for a long talk. You know what makes someone strong? He asked her gently. Being rich, she replied innocently. He smiled sadly. No, being kind when you're scared. Standing up even when your voice shakes. Last night, you were the bravest person in that room. Emily didn't fully understand everything, but she understood that her father was proud of her. And that meant everything. Weeks passed, and life slowly returned to normal. But something had changed inside the Parker family. They began spending more time together. Sunday dinners became sacred. Daniel reduced his travel schedule. He started mentoring young entrepreneurs in Brampton and donating to shelters in Toronto, remembering what fear felt like in his own home. One snowy afternoon, months later, Emily was at school when her teacher asked the class what a hero looked like. Some said superheroes from movies. Some said police officers or firefighters. Emily raised her hand and said, "A hero is someone who comes home when you need them most." Her teacher smiled, unaware of the story behind those words. Daniel eventually expanded his business across Ontario, but he never forgot that night. He installed a small framed drawing in his office, a picture Emily had drawn of their family holding hands under a big red maple leaf. At the top, she had written in uneven letters, "My dad is my hero." Success in Canada often means big houses, expensive cars, and impressive titles. But the Parker family learned that true success is safety, love, and presence. It's about being there when your child whispers, "Please don't hurt us," and answering with, "I'm here." And maybe that's the message we all need to hear. No matter how busy life gets, no matter how high we climb, someone at home is waiting, not for our money, not for our achievements, but simply for us to walk through that door. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing a parent can do is just come home.